And so we have Neptune moving, we have Saturn moving, we have Uranus moving, we have Jupiter moving, all of them this year into new signs. So this is a very unusual year where there's just a lot of shifting energy that, and it's also going back and forth this year. So it's like we're moving into the future, moving back into the past, moving back into the future. We're in this like liminal space, or I guess the Buddhists call it, we're in the bardo this year.
Welcome, soul travelers, to this special episode setting your tone for 2025 and all adventures you might want to plan ahead. Stay tuned as we are uncovering the astrology that will guide you on your very personal path of discovery and remembrance. And I am welcoming my amazing and beautiful guest, Ingrid Arboine. Ingrid is a Leo sun, an Aries moon, and Aquarius rising. She is an astrologer, coach, teacher, and budding writer, weaving a rich tapestry of astrological knowledge and personal experience into her astrology that has evolved alongside her own personal growth, travels, and life encounters, resulting in a unique approach that blends modern, traditional, esoteric, and ancient astrological tradition. At the heart of her practice is a deep fascination with the celestial realm, particularly the intriguing world of asteroids, mythology, and the connection of the celestial to the terrestrial. The stories that emanate from the stars, planets, and their celestial movements serve as a wellspring of insight, helping Ingrid and her clients to better understand themselves and the world around them. These cosmic narratives become intricately woven into the natal charts she interprets, shedding light on the profound mysteries of the human experience. In recent years, Ingrid has embarked on transformative journeys to Argentina, Egypt, France, England, Spain, and Portugal, forging a profound connection with the cosmos and the sacred sites that dot these lands. Through these enriching experiences, Ingrid has gained a heightened understanding of the power of using the celestial landscape and sacred spaces as tools for personal growth and transformation. Learning about the stars is never ending. Ingrid continues to expand her astrological expertise, weaving together ancient wisdom and modern insights to guide others on their journey of self-discovery and personal evolution. This is also the topic of her upcoming book, The Path is the Way, a book about reconnecting us with the path of the planetary spheres. She also writes a blog sharing insight on the upcoming energies you can find on her website and on Substack. Wow, welcome, Ingrid. It's such a pleasure to begin this year with a glimpse into the stars. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you very much for having me. This is a very exciting time to be alive and an incredible year ahead of us.
Oh, yes. So let's start exactly here. Can you tell us a few of the major astrological happenings that will shape the collective experience in 2025?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, there are so many astrological movements happening this year. We just had the nodes shift from Libra and Aries, with the North Node in Aries, to Pisces and Libra. So that shifts the direction that we're going into. We'll have almost all of the outer planets shifting, and the outer planets are really about they're much more collective. They're about the collective energy. And so we have Neptune moving, we have Saturn moving, we have Uranus moving, we have Jupiter moving, all of them this year into new signs. So this is a very unusual year where there's just a lot of shifting energy that, and it's also going back and forth this year. So it's like we're moving into the future, moving back into the past, moving back into the future. We're in this like liminal space, or I guess the Buddhists call it, we're in the bardo this year. Actually, it's a really good word the bardo, because often in the bardo, if you know anything about the bardo, creating this, you're creating what your life is going to be like when you kind of incarnate. And so there's this, okay, you're like almost, I always see like a baby up there in the sky just planning, okay, which chart am I going to jump into? Where's the planets going to be so that I can, live out my life in from the natal chart. And the natal chart is always the map of the life. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. So it already started with the nodes shifting.
Already started.
Can you give us some like details also in terms of, it doesn't have to be the exact dates, but maybe like months when these outer planets are shifting?
Yeah. I write these things down because I can never remember them all like off the top of my head. But the nodes shifted on January 11th. Neptune will go into Aries on, let's see, when Neptune will go into Aries on March 30th. It will go back into Pisces October 22nd. And Saturn will go into Aries in May 25th, then go back into Aries on September 1st. And then Jupiter is moving into Cancer. So going to do that on June 9th. And what am I missing here? We're going to have a Venus retrograde. We're going to have, as usual, Mercury retrogrades. Yeah, and I could talk about those as well as we go. Yeah, but this energy shift it's going from water signs where Saturn and Neptune have been into fire. So it's like this back and forth between water and fire, about water and fire. And I feel like I, as well as many other astrologers, don't quite know. Like the energy is so unusual that we don't quite know exactly what it will look like. But it's a big shift.
I love it. I don't. Do you know the term starfire?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've been working a lot with the starfire, and you describing these two elements where supposedly they are opposite. To me, it's actually like for us to understand and maybe learn how they can complement each other and how we can move fluidly from one into the other and embody these qualities.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's interesting because my whole shift into going to sacred spaces and looking at the astrology of sacred spaces started in the end of 2020, when Saturn and Jupiter made a conjunction at the very beginning of Aquarius. And when Saturn and Jupiter make conjunctions, they make this triangle. Every 20 years, they go one here, here, here. So they make this triangle. And it shifted, and you may have heard this before, it shifted from being in earth signs and now it's in air signs. I think it's 300 years that it's in air signs. But then it goes into like, it stays in one element. And I was looking at it and I was like, this is like the Merkaba. And then I ended up really diving in and researching the Merkaba and this energy of the masculine, right? Which is fire spirit, right? And then the feminine, right? And then they create this Merkaba. So, and I just really resonated with it because I've always had this deep connection. All of my research, I did a master's on the masculine and feminine in the workplace around coaching and so on. So I've always been super fascinated with that blending and how they balance one another. I might have a little bit of a different understanding of starfire, but is that kind of what you were talking about? Because the starfire fire well, anyways, tell me what the star fire is.
So first of all, thank you for bringing up the Merkaba. I love it. There is a lot of different layers to this starfire, I guess. But I want to say is that ultimately it's this divine spark of star origin alive within us, and how we can bring this light, this fire from the stars in our own bloodstreams, which is the water or the sacred womb waters, and and work with it. So it's definitely, I feel tempted to say a polarity but at the same time it's like, no, it's not a polarity. It's
yeah. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, but usually the water is the feminine and the masculine is fire, and then there's earth. But they're earth and air. But they're we did move into air, but what I was saying is really connected me with that masculine, feminine energy, and how it kind of plays out in the astrology, which is huge. Which is really huge.
So tell us more about that.
Yeah. Well, a big part of the book that I'm writing, what actually started because I did the Camino. I did the Camino in Spain, and then went to Portugal, and then I went to France. And when I went to France, I considered it a different Camino. It was the Mary Magdalene path. And there I actually joined up with 13 other people, and we did the path together.
Hey, everybody. If you are enjoying the show, then you would do me the biggest favor in clicking the subscribe button and engaging with my content so I can continue to deliver these beautiful conversations to you. Thank you so much.
On the Camino, I was with one other person, and we walked it. Before I started, I was told, the Camino in Spain is the masculine, and the one in France, the Mary Magdalene path, is feminine. So I was like, okay, well, let's go. We'll find out. We'll explore. In France, there's this they say that there's this layout of joining in the south of France, joining these different cathedrals and sacred sites to create a pentagram. And so so in Rennes-le-Château and surrounding areas. And so I was like, okay, what is this about? And of course I watched all of the old stuff, and I noticed, there's like, when you watch Henry Lincoln, there's actually 2 pentagrams overlapping one another. And I was like, that's interesting. And what there is actually is Venus makes an 8-year cycle that creates this pentagram or rose. And then Mars joins Venus to make this rose shape over 32 years. So not all conjunctions that Mars and Venus and the sun was there as well, result in this pentagram. But every 6.4 years, Mars comes and conjuncts Venus and the sun. And then over 32 years, it makes a pentagram. And there is a little bit over the long term, there's a little bit of a breakdown of that. It does this weird thing. And then it's kind of switches, because this is kind of more technical, but for right now, we're in this period where it's making these conjunctions at the superior conjunction. And the superior conjunction is really when we're at our height, from my perspective, when we're at our highest point as in the feminine. And then we go through this cycle down into the inferior conjunction, which is when Venus retrogrades. This is what we're coming into this year. So the energy is high. We're on the heels of this Cancer full moon, and there's a lot of energy. It didn't make any aspect to my chart, but I could just feel it around everybody. I'm like checking in. Are you guys okay? How you feeling? I'm just checking in with everybody. But yeah. So the two roses are the masculine and the feminine, and Venus really, she initiates Mars into this rose path. She softens him. She brings him into an energy of, I like to call it a knightly energy, where there's kindness, where there's chivalry. I mean, some women are like, no chivalry, but where there's a deep respect for the feminine. She brings him when Mars meets up with Venus in this cycle, she teaches him this. And we reiterate this as well if we so choose in the path that we can take with Mars and Venus.
There is so much here. And, just like personally, I'm going back the last 2 days, what happened, and I'm like ticking boxes and like, yep, okay. So, and I want to stay a little bit longer. So you talked about Venus and Mars, and also all the symbolism with the Merkaba. So tying these constellations, or maybe even the planets and the geometrical shapes that they make in the cosmos, and bringing them to the Earth plane. So where on the Earth is this star mapping encoded? What you have found so far?
Yeah, well, a lot of it is encoded in different sacred sites, particularly where Venus shows up. So Venus, she has very regular cycle 8 in our planetary system. So she's like the regulator of the whole solar system. And there is a resonance there. So I have shifted into using a model called the Tychos model. And the Tychos model is a binary star system. It is the most accurate description of our solar system. And when we look at that and really understand how the planets work, there is a resonance that goes through everything. The person who developed the Tychos model says the resonance comes from the moon, but everything is in resonance. When you look at, and the resonance happens over a longer cycle, you can see there's like mathematical resonance of 2 to 3, like there's no decimals in there or anything. It's very precise. And the ancients knew it. The ancients, like particularly the Mayans and the Sumerians, because they recorded it. Lots of what they recorded, well, the Mayans stuff has been lost. The Sumerian stuff has been translated, but I think it's about 5% that's been translated, like very little. So there's a whole bunch of knowledge out there that we don't have yet, or which they're not very quick in translating that kind of stuff or bringing it out into the world. But there's a good reason, because much of it is challenging to our status quo of, current religion, current, the current ways that things are done. So on the Earth, there is the ancients created sites that aligned to these different astrological things, particularly Venus, the moon, and solstices and equinoxes. There are apparently other alignments, but there's always those are the main ones. So they are always in places where there are strong ley lines. So telluric energy, the energy of the earth, because when you connect the cosmic with the ground, the telluric energy, and you stand in it, it is so powerful. It is alchemy. It is basically alchemy, and you can do some very powerful things with it. So some places, I think many people know, like Stonehenge is aligned to the solstices, and equinoxes is also aligned to lunar standstill, which I could talk about in a minute. I believe the Great Pyramid is aligned. At least I know it's aligned to the polar star. And there are many places, like in England and France, a lot in Europe. I haven't fully explored the locations in like South America and Central America and that, but I'm hoping to get there at some point. And they also, it's basically archaeologists and what they find and reveal to us. And often, what do they call it? Lay researchers like Graham Hancock, who go and like, I think there's something here, and they go and figure it out. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's totally it. So, but this is actually a special year in terms of this, because Venus is in this phase with the sun where she will be, I don't even know if there's a name for it, but every 8 years she is in the morning. She's a morning star because she goes from morning star to evening star. She's a morning star with the sun. And at the winter solstice. So a great place to see this is Newgrange. If you can get, because it's a lottery, if you can get there. So yeah, they have not, I went on their website, they have not advertised this at all. And I'm imagining that they wouldn't, because then you'd have like a slew of people going. But I double check, triple check. I have a screenshot of the chart if you want to see it, but it is, so basically what happens is Newgrange is this mound that they made, but it's older than the pyramids, they say.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That totally depends on how you date the pyramids as well.
That is true as well.
It's this mound. Yeah. And it has a light box in it. They call it a light box. And so it's like a little hole. And in through the hole is where at solstice the light comes in. So the light of the sun. But every 8 years, just before the sun rises, Venus rises, and she's on the same path. Now, like Venus is like our moon. Our moon goes like, sometimes it's this high, sometimes it's this high, sometimes it's right in the middle of the path. And when it's right in the middle, that's when we have eclipses. So it's like Venus is right in, she's not eclipsing the sun, but she's like right on the same path. So if you're in there, you can see Venus and then Venus rise, and there's some light that comes in, and then the sun rises, and then there's light that comes in. And they believe that this was, a very big part of using, it's a cave. So cave kinds of experiences of related to fertility, but I think they are also beyond fertility. I think almost every culture had this process where, when Venus goes into the underworld, we're in an underworld ritual, and we're assessing our values, which is what Venus is, love, values. We're in this space of being tested, like what we really believe about, or what we really are committed to in terms of our values and in terms of love, and how much of it we express and so on. So I think that that's how they used it. Though, of course, we don't know, but we do have sort of stories. We have like the mythological stories. For instance, Inanna in the Sumerian area, and Isis. I really, really do like the older stories because they are less violent towards women. As we go in time, there's some violence that happens. They're far more empowered in the very far past, and they get disempowered as we go along. And Inanna is the same energy as Isis, is the same energy as Ishtar, is the same energy as Mary Magdalene. And you see how powerful Mary Magdalene is, but also disempowered. Like her narrative, who she is totally hidden by the time we get to the age of Pisces.
Yeah. So the phenomena you just explained, is that the reason why they talk about that this is a Venus year?
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Who says it's a Venus year? But that's cool.
Well, I've read that all over. Like, even the newspaper that has the very basic astrological forecast come out in January. Everybody says it's a Venus year, and I was like, why is that actually?
Huh. I'm terrible at reading other people's astrological things, and it's for a reason. I like to be to fully understand it from my own perspective. So sometimes I miss out what other people say, but that is very interesting.
Well, I guess you've just given us the explanation. So
yeah, perhaps that's the explanation. Yeah. But there's two powerful things that are happening that are rare. We have we had the Venus alignment. And so beyond Newgrange, I believe there's some other places that you can see it. And you might have to do some researching of sacred sites. And also there's sacred sites that are, like they say, there's no alignment. And then when you go there, you find out actually there is, right? So there is one, I don't know if you've heard of it. I'm going to scroll down because I wrote it down. It's in Romania. It's a cave in Romania. And they actually have inside this cave, the Merkaba, and it's thousands of years old, the Merkaba. And it has inside the Merkaba, it's just escaping me, yin and yang symbol.
So the Merkaba, is it like a stone Merkaba, or what is it made of?
It's drawn, it's a cave painting. Here, I'll show you.
It's a cave painting. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Here,
I've never heard of it.
Show you. And yeah, and it's a cave. And it has a light box. So basically this little hole where the light comes in. And so they know there's some star alignment to it. But this cave became a monastery. And, at some point, they're like, no, there's no star alignment here. Maybe, but no. So if people, are close by there or have the time or planning to go in this area, then you can maybe go on the solstice, or you can go, winter solstice, and see if this happens. It's called, let me just look what it's called. Sincha Vece Temple Cave. SINCAVECHE Temple Cave.
I've never heard about it. Thank you for bringing it up.
I'm going to share my screen just to show.
Okay, that's for everybody watching right now. Ingrid is sharing.
Can you see that?
The picture. It's a little bit hard to make it out, but yeah, yes, I can see the Merkaba. Wow. Yeah.
So how do I make this bigger? Let's see. Whoop, that was way too big.
Oh, that's
Like
amazing.
we're encompassed in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I don't know how the church explains this. Oh, it was just there. And there's a light, the light box. So that Romania. It's just stunning. And this is really old, like thousands of years old. So
Never seen it. Wow, that's
yeah.
quite intriguing. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll stop sharing for now. Yeah. So there is apparently at Rosalind's chapel, there is a light box that aligns to the equinoxes, but it's not happening this year, so I haven't looked at when the actual date of that is. But so they exist. They exist, and the reason that you want to be inside a cave and to have this light box with this alignment is because Venus is actually in the underworld. So we aren't able to see Venus. Like, she's too close to the sun. They call it behind the sun. She's not behind the sun, but she's too close to the sun. And so the sun is blocking her light. But inside the cave, through the light box, it blocks out all the other light around it. And so it's able to just shine in, and then the sun comes and shines in. So how they figured this out, like, you can't tell me these ancient people weren't brilliant.
Yeah.
Can't.
Yeah. So one thing that you just said struck me about Rosalind when you mentioned that it aligns to the equinoxes, but it's like not the exact date. I actually thought that all the alignments that are done to either the solstices or the equinoxes the phenomena can be witnessed every year. So that is not true then.
Yeah, sorry. You can see the equinox every year. It is specifically this alignment of Venus, which happens every 8 years.
Okay.
If it's built to align, like every year in Newgrange, you will see the solstice. Only every 8 years, you will see Venus and then the solstice light.
Okay. And then you mentioned the lunar standstill. So please share about what that is and where we could potentially witness this.
So lunar standstill. Okay, so the moon, it has a path like this, but every year it keeps going higher and higher and higher. So there's a point where it gets to the highest point, and that's lunar standstill, and then it goes back down. Okay, so it's every 18.6 years. So we are in lunar standstill in 2025. So when you look at the moon, you're like, wow, it's really high up. And sometimes it's much lower down, right? So there are sacred sites that are aligned to this standstill. And I don't know if they know exactly why they created this alignment. So one of them is, well, they're studying this right now. They're studying Stonehenge. It happens every month. Like from now to like probably September, you can try and see it and go, but you're not going to be able to get into Stonehenge. There's only certain times they allow people in, and they are the equinoxes, right? Or sorry, the solstices. So,
well, you can actually book private slots. Sometimes they open them outside the hours of the public. I've done it once. And I mean, honestly, like, this is where the magic happens. I would not want to be just passing by. But yeah, so it is possible, but you have to like pick a slot.
Yeah.
And,
okay.
And when would that be? So with the full moon, or what is...
Yes.
What phase does the full moon? Yeah. Okay.
full moon. So there is an alignment, and I'm just, because I always forget these names. I'm just trying to get my little notes here. So lunar standstill, there's Chimney Rock, Colorado. So the native people had this alignment, Stonehenge, and there's this one in Scotland called Calanese,
Calanage.
CALA.
It's
Yeah.
a stone circle on the Isle of Skye. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm horrible at pronouncing things.
No.
So there's a stone circle in the mountain in the background. They call it like lying woman. The woman looks like she's sleeping, right? So it's just
I heard it's called Sleeping Beauty. Yeah.
Sleeping Beauty. Yeah. And I guess from particular angles, she looks pregnant as well. So what happens at lunar standstill, and they are, you can go on their site, they're and I can share a link of a video of the last 18 and a half years ago.
Oh, yes, please.
And basically the moon rises up, and so now it's normally when it's lower, it goes kind of right through the stones. But at lunar standstill, when it's highest, it skims across the top of the stones. And the stones they've named like the Maiden Stone. It's a very feminine site. So there's the maiden, the crone, the three moon goddess basically there. And there's also a phallic, right? So then the moon comes and it skims across the top, and then it hits the phallic. And it looks like it's like joining, the seed, and the phallic is like coming together, and then it goes down.
Wow.
Yeah. So a strong feminine, strong fertility, and all it's not just young woman getting, all representations of the various stages of woman are there, and it's just phenomenal. So that is happening this year. Only 18.6 years it happens. So
amazing.
I think that's pretty special.
It is. And, I've just recently had a reading with you, and I can attest. So people, that's been absolutely phenomenal. And I've never had a reading quite like this. So I find your style is very super unique, weaving in the asteroids and this feminine energy, and also everything that you're telling me now or telling us now. I don't even know how to tag it in a way. But tell us a little bit how you discovered this as your own story, and how what has allowed you to come into the understanding that there is more layers to what we commonly know as astrology, and the insights that you receive from that about yourself.
Yeah, there's been a couple of very powerful experiences I've had. So there's a couple of ways. I'll just tell you this first. There's a couple of ways that you can use the astrology. You can use, there's this alignment. I'm just, here in my home, but maybe I want to kick it up a notch with some energy, and I go to a sacred site locally nearby. And then, I have a full moon ceremony, or I do, something with the Venus cycle or something like that. So that's one. Then you can go to places that are representative of the energy. So this is what I did. So I was in south of France. There was a full moon in Capricorn, and Capricorn is very much around the structures of your life and so on. And I was just like, okay, there's some structures that I just want to shift. And full moon is always opposite. So opposite to the Cancer element was in there. So I really brought in this lineage bit, like my lineage, the lineage of women and so on. And I went to Montségur, and before I went, I prepped and I put this energy into some rocks, and each rock represented something that I wanted to shift or let go of in my lineage, in the structure of my life. And I also did it for the Cathars, because the Cathars, and so there were some things that were beyond myself that I put into there. And then I put the rocks in my backpack and I climbed up the mountain, and then I put them around in a sand painting, as they would call it, and did a little ceremony. And I set out an intention. I went really early. I set out an intention that nobody would be there, and nobody was there. I went really early. Nobody was there. So, and then later people came. And from that full moon to the next new moon, wow, like the shifts were incredible. The stuff that came up that was like, there was so much alchemy in that I can't even explain it. So just entering into the energy of what the astrological information is saying. And also Capricorn represents mountains. So it rules mountains. So, all right, this is what I'm going to do. Powerful, powerful, powerful. So there's no, this is a holy mountain. It's a sacred site. There's probably energy lines there. It isn't. You can use the energy of the astrological energy and create a full experience for yourself and use the energy that's available. And it really dramatically shifts things. At full moons you're releasing. So it was like, boy, did I release. In some ways I was like, why did I do that? It got a little crazy, but so that's one way. And then there are these sacred sites that you can go to that were built by the ancients, and they built it for this specific reason on these specific days that happen cyclically. And you can go and experience that and set your own intention and use the information in that way. So another way that, just using, when I did the Mary Magdalene path, we ended on Mary Magdalene Day. It was the beginning of Venus retrograde. So this whole thing leading up to Venus retrograde, and we're preparing for Venus retrograde, and all of us used it in a very powerful way. I did everybody. Oh, this was very interesting too, because sometimes what you do is you pull people towards you unconsciously that you're connected via astrology. So there were 13 people. We actually had another person who we just met on a mountain join us. And every single person had their Venus on one of the Venus points in the whole cycle.
Of course.
We're like, okay, Mary Magdalene, what do you want us to do here?
Yeah. If you wanted to have planned that, no way. Wow.
Yeah. So sometimes the universe just conspires for you to do these things. So, if you've already planned something, you can go and look at the astrology and you can figure it out. So one of the people that was on that trip, she's done another Mary Magdalene trip last year, and I did the astrology for that. And then this year coming up, she will be doing a Mary Magdalene path again. And that has this in July, because everybody wants to go to France in July. It's beautiful.
22nd
so there's
of July.
Of course, because 22nd is Mary Magdalene Day. But they're starting a little bit ahead of that on July 10th is the full moon in Capricorn. I actually think the Capricorn full moon is very powerful. But this particular full moon is at the same degree as this Mars, Venus, sun alignment that's happening, which is happening in January of 2026. And so I consider this, if you're doing anything, you can use this energy to kind of prep in terms of releasing things, to prep yourself for the Venus-Mars sun alignment, which is happening January 6th, I believe.
Okay, so there is still time for preparation.
The Venus-Mars and that energy you can use to, okay, I'm going to release. And when we come into that Venus alignment, Venus-Mars sun alignment will be in Capricorn. So we're building new structures around our relationships. We're coming into a really new time in terms of relationships coming into next year. And so you can't do that without releasing something, without getting, like the prep, I think, is very important. And I also just I went and I looked at the astrology of that alignment, because even though it's in 2026, it's like 7 days into 2026. So I thought, okay, we'll sneak something in from 2026 into 2025, because you do have to prepare, I believe. It has its lines. There are various lines, mundane lines, they call them, but the ones that are going through the 7th house of the mundane chart are going right through Toledo, Spain. Toledo, Spain is where, this is like, you can't make this up. Toledo, Spain is where the Grail story comes from. So it originated, the Grail story around Parzival and the quest for the Holy Grail. It comes out of Toledo, because Toledo was a center it was a translation center. There was Jewish, Christian, and Muslim religions. Everybody lived, harmoniously at one point in time. And they had all of this information coming in where they translated it. So what happened during early Christianity, a lot of our books, a lot of our knowledge was wiped out. So our Greek translation, our Greek mythologies, like Plato, Aristotle, and stuff like that, are actually translations from Muslim texts, because the Muslims didn't destroy them. And that happened in Toledo. So one of these things that was translated was around the story of Parzival, which is because the person who had the knowledge was an alchemist and an astrologer. He was a star watcher. So there is a connection with the Holy Grail, and it's there, of course, as above, so below. There is a astrological connection to the Grail story, but it came out of Toledo. So I was like, wow, you can't make this up. Yeah, it'd be a very, very powerful place to be for that alignment.
And that was the July full moon, you said.
So the July full moon is the prep. It's the time where the full moon will happen at the exact degree of where Venus, Mars, and the sun will be on January 7th, 2026.
Okay, got it. Wow.
There's always these, I was just saying, there's always these triggers. So when closer moving planets, or like Venus, and when closer to moving, like the moon goes over a point, it can often trigger energy of a point that will happen much later on. Yeah. So, and ask your question, because I got another example of this, I'll tell you, for this year. You have a question?
No. Go ahead.
Oh,
and then I'll complete with the other question. Yeah.
So the other alignment that's happening with this is Venus is going retrograde at 9 degrees of Aries. Mercury will also go retrograde a couple days later, like a week later, around a week later, at the same degrees, 9 degrees of Aries. The eclipse happening in March, at the end of March, is at 9 degrees Aries. So when these two guys come along, they're eclipse triggers. There's so much happening with Venus retrograde and Mercury retrograde that is connected to the eclipse. And it's our last Aries one, because then we're going into eclipses with Pisces and Virgo. Aries, anyways, what I'll say about Aries is really about knowing yourself, knowing your values, knowing who you are. It's going to test how we express ourselves to the world. And because Mercury is also going to be there, it's going to test our communication. It's going to test our values. It's about who am I? And am I going to be authentic? Am I going to be, just following the crowd, or am I going to be true to myself? And sometimes that the very Aries word courage comes in to that. And so it's going to be a time of deep courage, or a need for deep courage. So.
Yeah. Yeah. All of what you're saying is so fascinating, and it really feels like there's a whole other layer of how astrology links us, or has been linking us always, but it's this understanding and the remembrance of it, and the sacred mirror of the above and the below. And there's one question that I want to ask before we kind of come to a completion, because you told me something about a Shekinah alignment.
Yes.
Would you want to talk a little bit into this?
The Shekinah alignment. So there's so many versions of what people think this is, but one of them comes out of this book called Gabriel's Machine. And they say in there, the Shekinah is actually aligned to Rosalind's chapel. There's a light box. And I don't think most people are going to be able to see it, but there's a light box there. Again, it's run by, if you go to Rosalind's chapel, I don't know if you've been there, but what they tell you is like a bunch of crap, unless you get somebody who's like, okay, by the way, this is the truth. But there's a light box. The light box is aligned to the Shekinah, they say. And so what the Shekinah is when Venus and Mercury are morning stars. So Venus and Mercury will be morning stars in conjunction on November 26th. Let me look. But what has to happen, similar to the one with the Sun and Venus, is they have to be at the same declination. So the declination is what makes them look like one star. And so they are going to be pretty close this year, but they may not look like one star. Very close, though. And I still think, because this alignment happens they say 40 years. So, it's going to be super rare for anybody to see. So when they get close enough, I think you're still in that energy. But what they say in the book is that Jesus was born under the Shekinah. So and this also is something you can see in a light box. And they say that Solomon's temple was built to shine the light of Venus and Mercury. And when they shine together, they create a star that you see. You will see the star that goes like and the kind of Merkaba looking thing. So one of the things I do want to explore more in my research is the Merkaba related to the Venus Mercury alignment, or is it more related to the Venus Mars alignment?
Yeah.
In mythology, both happen. Venus is kind of like, mythologically, she's with Hermes, and she's also with Mars. So both can happen. And they're very different types of relationships.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. And when can we expect your book?
So what happened with my book is I thought it was just about Mars and Venus. And then I got into the research. And then my guides were like, oh, and by the way, forget all of this part because this. And I was like, oh my God, I have to throw away like half of it, as sometimes happens. So I was expecting it to be out a lot sooner, and I'm really hoping for this summer. I think my astrology is saying this summer as well.
Amazing. Well, we are all excited about it. As soon as you have the link, let us know. And even later, we can put it in there. So I would definitely want to buy it.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Sounds.
And yeah, you know, I mean, obviously we could go down so many things here, but I also want to be mindful of time. I feel that we just have given people a taster of the knowledge, the wisdom, the remembrance that is out there. Is there anything before we complete that you would want to touch on that we haven't mentioned?
No, I mean, you know, we always do it again. Just don't touch on more. But yeah, this is just basically, I mean, these alignments that we have this year are special. So if you have time, money, and you can go to some of these places, they're things that our ancestors did leave to us. And we may not fully understand them, but one of the things that I have experienced is when you go there and you're in the energy of the sacred site, they give you the information. Maybe you can't prove it in court, but you know in your heart, this is what this was, you know? So yeah. And this is all about our soul's growth. We can use this energy, but this is the way I like to look at astrology as, you know, energy that's available for us to grow on our soul's path, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. What a beautiful way to put it. Absolutely. So where can people find you and how can they work with you?
Yeah. So I am at clanmotherworldwide.com. I'm also on Substack if you want to read just my posts. As I'm writing my book, I'm only available on certain days. So sorry about that, but I got to get it done. And yeah, so that's where you can find me. Also on Instagram, sometimes I post there about just the energies and I always take pictures of planets when I see them and that kind of thing. Explain things. There's a post there about the full moon last night.
I love that. Well, thank you. We are for sure going to be putting all the links. And as I mentioned, I had a reading with Ingrid lately and it's revealed so much. I still feel that I'm in the process of processing and integrating as we of course like go along in the year and things will reveal and the Maha moments will come. So thank you so much for coming on the show and bringing this. It really feels like new information. Thank you. It's been really incredible.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me and for allowing me to share this. This has been fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for tuning in and listening, everyone. If you, as Ingrid said, find some time, energy, money, funds to visit these sites, then go out and explore and let us know what you experience. We will see you next time. Thank you for tuning in.